that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the famous Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. We do this every week. It's very predictable.
It's like the click and clack, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's fun. Anyway, as I've told you every week, I get up early in the morning and go to the news and look at articles that I can find online about energy and climate change. And I put up 10 to 15 articles in the form of synopses with links to my blog, geoharvey.com. If you find something interesting among the articles that we talk about today, these articles that we're talking about are the ones that are the most interesting from the previous week's blogs.
Best of the blog.
Best of the blog.
Yeah, and I mention this each time.
Yeah.
Some of these things are really quite interesting.
Yeah.
We could spend the whole show talking about some of one item.
Yep.
So we don't really have time, but if we say something interesting, look it up.
Yeah.
And read it. I'll try and alert you to some of the better ones,
Yep.
but I don't always catch them.
And we try to tell you what days these things appeared on, so you can go to the blog, geoharvey.com, and there's a calendar there, and you can click on the date on the calendar, and that'll take you to a list of 10 to 15 items that you can look through. So we're starting with an item from etenergyworld.com.
Let us begin.
Let us begin, and that has
GE and Invenergy build a wind farm in Oklahoma, which will be the biggest in the U.S.
Yeah, this is interesting because etenergyworld.com is published in India.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And unlike many Indian publications, it speaks in a version of English that's pretty clear to Americans.
Not in Indian English.
Huh?
Not Indian English.
No, Indian English
no
is...
lax and crores.
Well, Indian English is a different style than American
definitely.
English, and
Definitely.
I find
More
it
formal.
longer. Everything, it's like in, people who learned that good reporting was like Faulkner, find that this is more like the opposite of Faulkner. If you want to say something, use as many words as you possibly can. Anyway, this is from etenergyworld.com, and did you read the title for this, Don?
I did.
You did? All right. Oh, you did, yes. Power development company Invenergy, LLC, and General Electric Company announced plans to build the largest wind farm in the United States in Oklahoma, part of a $4.5 billion project to provide electricity to 1.1 million utility customers in the region. The 2-gigawatt Windcatcher wind farm is scheduled to come online in 2020.
There's a little quick takeaway here. There's
Yeah.
going to be 800 turbines in
800
this project.
turbines, yeah. That's a lot of turbines.
That's a lot of turbines.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on out there, and believe me, this thing has been in the news over and over and over and over. It's still appearing in the news. In fact, there's new articles about it appearing at my blog because, for one thing, one of the more recent articles, which is not in this week's TV material, is just the transmission line they have to put in to support this thing.
350 miles long. Dedicated.
Dedicated line. There's a lot going on here, but there you have it.
Well, Tulsa couldn't be farther from the Panhandle and still be in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, should we move on?
Move along.
We have an item
along.
coming here from North American Wind Power.
Yeah, got a picture coming up too.
No, not for this one.
Not for this one.
Not for this one. But anyway, this
I
is
got a
from
picture up here, but it doesn't. It's oh, I'm jumping one.
You're
getting
jumping
ahead of
one.
us.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of us. Renewables capable of being America's energy choice.
According to a new report from Environment America Research and Policy Center, the U.S. generates nearly 8 times as much electricity from the sun and wind as it did in 2007. This is enough to power more than 25 million homes. The average American uses 10% less energy than he or she did 10 years ago. And these are both trends.
Well, it's inevitable. I mean, economics are going to dictate it, but
Yep.
eventually all of our power will be generated by renewables.
Yeah, well, anything that isn't renewable is not sustainable. And if it can't be
By
sustained,
definition.
yeah, and if it can't be sustained, it's
We're
going
gonna
to
run
end.
out.
We're going to run out. So fossil fuels, we're going to end the use of fossil fuels, whether it's because we run out of fossil fuels or decide that the damage they do is too great. But, you know, one way or the other, there it is. These, by the way, were appeared on my blog on July 26th, and if you want to find them, you can click on the calendar, as I said.
They appeared on the 26th.
They appeared on the 26th
Okay.
on my blog.
Yeah, yeah.
The actual articles probably appeared the day before that in the news.
Right.
Okay.
So we finally got that.
Should we
picture
go on?
coming
Yeah,
up-
we've got a
that
picture coming up.
that we're going to have.
That's a wonky PV plant. Things don't seem to line up somehow. Okay,
What
this
does
is
it say there?
this is from PV
Somali
magazine.
PV.
Sonadix,
yeah.
Sonadix or Sonadix PV plant in Spain.
That's an existing plant.
That is, yes.
Obviously, it is. Otherwise, it's a real good picture, real good drawing.
Yeah, right. Well, you can do real good drawings with computers these days.
Spain's auction allocates 3.5 gigawatts of PV capacity.
Yeah. Around 3,516 megawatts of solar projects were selected in Spain's renewable energy auction for large-scale solar and wind power plants held by the Spanish Ministry of Energy, Tourism and the Digital Agenda. Provisional data provided by the spokesman of the Spanish Solar Association, UNEF, said the share of wind power was just 720 megawatts. So wind power got about 20%.
This was an auction. So
This was an auction,
So the bid price is what determines it.
Yes, that's right.
And PV's getting cheaper than wind.
PV is getting cheaper than wind, that's right. And this is not an auction for capacity, it's an auction for delivered electricity.
Power.
Yeah,
By January 1st, 2020.
yeah.
That's coming up quick.
You know, it is. It is. When you think about this, when we get to the end of this show and we're talking about nuclear power,
Yeah.
the contrast between that and solar and wind is just amazing, because
7 years overrun.
Yeah, it's like, you know, a gigawatt and a half of capacity costs $25 billion, and you know it's. And comes in 7 years.
They are changing.
They are.
Right?
It's pretty crazy.
The old model is over.
The old model is over. We are up to Friday, July 27th, and we've got an item from from telegraph.co.uk.
Shell braces for, quote, lower forever oil.
This is one of the most
vehicle.
interesting articles. I'm sorry, I broke into what you were saying there. Maybe you should say it again.
I will. Shell braces for lower forever oil amid electric vehicle boom.
Royal Dutch Shell is bracing for a peak in oil demand. Shell boss Ben van Beurden said the oil major had changed its company mindset to a, quote, lower forever, end quote, oil price environment, and is focusing on being, quote, fit for the 40s, end quote, in reference to the faltering oil price, which has struggled to remain above $50, the $50 per barrel mark.
Well, what this article here is talking about is there's a boom coming in electric vehicles.
Yeah.
And you can see what's setting it up. The UK, France, China, India have all passed legislation banning
gas
fossil fuel by 2040.
Yeah, or 2035 in some cases.
Or something.
And, you know, today there was an article in, I think it was today, it might have been yesterday, about electric buses. The county of Los Angeles has banned diesel-powered buses.
I haven't
They're
seen
gonna
that
they're
one
gonna
yet.
replace their entire
Yeah.
bus fleet by 2030.
Well,
They're
we,
just
we
replacing
did
the whole
we did
thing.
talk quite a while ago about electric buses.
Yeah.
And they're going to have recharging coils
Yes.
set at the bus stops.
Yes.
So when a bus is picking up passengers, it's getting zapped to
Yeah.
recharge its
Don't
battery.
stick your fingers in there.
Oh, they're buried in the pavement.
Yes.
Yeah.
How they do that, I don't know, but
It's
you know.
magnetic coils. Yeah.
Okay. I wrote an article about this for Clean Technica, and one of the people who commented on the article said I was living in a fantasy world, because, and you know, basically I was just reporting what this guy said and what the implications are, and this person who wrote this said because gas prices are going to go up. And
Well, yeah.
I
The sun's going to rise.
yeah, I happen to think you know, really what I feel like right now is that for a while gas prices will remain low,
Yeah.
and then gas prices will, in a fairly short period, go through the roof. And I mean like
You're
to
not the only one saying this.
$200 a barrel.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the thing that will be most disconcerting to the oil companies about it is that even at the high prices, they won't be able to make money. This is what I'm expecting.
That's a tough one.
Well, the reason is because I feel what's happening is we're going to have a contraction of the oil market. And as the oil market contracts, the prices remain low. But what happens in the course of that is that people start moving away from oil. Oil is not delivered as much, but this means that the infrastructure that they've got still has to be paid for, even though it's not productive.
Which is going to raise prices.
Yeah, but if the market doesn't allow for a raise in prices, they're going to start going out of business, and then there's more infrastructure, which is not, you know, and in the end, you get into a situation where the demand for oil can be low, and the ability to produce it even lower.
Well, that's sort of happening right now because the demand is low and it can't justify additional expenditures on exploration and development.
Yeah, we're in a.
So we're not getting the oil, we're not getting the next decade's oil out of the ground.
Yeah.
We're not spending the money on it.
We're not getting ready for the next go round. Should we move on?
Yeah, we got a nice picture here
We have a
of Lake
picture here of
Champlain.
Lake Champlain and an article from Vermont Biz. There you go.
Governor Scott supports underwater power link from Canada.
Vermont Governor Phil Scott issued a statement in support of proposals to supply Massachusetts with 1,000 megawatts of clean power via the TDI New England Clean Power Link. The TDI project would run from the Canadian border under Lake Champlain for nearly 100 miles before connecting to the New England grid in Ludlow.
This is a very interesting project. I mean, the whole concept is interesting because the same company it's going to put in two 5-inch cables under Lake Champlain
imagine
for this project.
Yeah.
But they got a parallel project running in New York
Yes.
that's going all the way to New York City that's the same size as this. It's another
5-inch cable pair.
1,000 megawatts.
Yeah.
It's another two 5-inch
Is that going to go
cables.
down the Hudson River?
Yes.
You see, this is something that I find absolutely amazing, is that you have these transmission lines which run across the countryside and completely make the mountains and the hills ugly, and you know they're
Don't get me started.
appalling. but all of a sudden it becomes cheaper to run them underwater, and I just
They're not just underwater. They're burying them underwater.
burying them
Yeah,
so the fish can't nibble on them.
They're probably worried about small boat anchors and stuff like that.
Maybe they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That might be. They're not worried about fish nibbling on them.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Although I've read sturgeon have come back in the Hudson River long since.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Yep.
They're big fish.
They are. Yeah.
Well, anyhow,
Okay.
quick takeaway on this thing is $1.2 billion.
Yes.
It's going to supply nearly twice the power that Vermont Yankee did before it shut down.
Yes.
Okay, so it's going into the Vermont grid, but it's going down country from there.
Yeah.
It's going to go down into Connecticut and Boston and whatever.
Yep.
And then the New York one's going right into Queens. It's going to support New York City.
It's interesting to see this stuff developing. Anyway.
Well, it's about time. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is an intelligent way to deliver power.
Yep. Still on Friday, July 28th, we come to an item from Clean Technica.
Increasing water stress due to climate change threatens European electricity production.
This is interesting.
You don't think much about this.
With climate change, because you're using coal and natural gas in your power plants and other things, it becomes impossible to get electricity out of the coal and the gas-driven power plants. And by the way, also, you reduce the amount of solar power you can get out of your solar panels. With climate change, water scarcity and warmth could begin impacting European electricity generation as soon as 2030, causing production to decrease or stop altogether. According to a study published in the journal Nature, it concludes that traditional generation sources such as coal, gas, and nuclear will become increasingly vulnerable.
But what's going on here is these thermally generated power stations.
Thermally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coal, oil, gas, whatever.
Yeah.
Use huge amounts of water.
Should have had yourself on camera when you did that.
Want me to get me up there?
Huge!
They do use huge amounts of water for generation. So they got to have access to that water.
Yeah. There was a plant in India about a year ago, big plant, just shut down because it didn't have any water to cool it. Yeah. And if, I had an interesting conversation with a guy who was an engineer at the Vermont Yankee Nuclear Power Plant maybe 5 or 8 years ago. And he told me that plant generated enough waste heat to heat every house in Vermont.
I can believe Brattleboro, but every house
in Vermont. Well, look, just think about this for a second. You have a nuclear plant going, and it's running at an efficiency of about 35%.
Yeah.
Why is it at that efficiency? Because most of the heat goes into the air and the water.
Yeah, it does.
So they're generating 620 megawatts, but they've got 1,240 megawatts just going into the air and water.
Atmosphere.
And, he didn't say generate enough heat for every customer in Vermont. He just said every house, which is not as doesn't include the high schools and the factories.
Mincing words there.
Well, yeah, people do that. Anyway, it is.
Well, this is real here. This is actually happening because recent heat waves in Europe have led to periods of curtailment in electricity generation.
Yep.
So they're worried now.
They're worried already.
Yeah.
And it's, as I said, it's been happening in India and has shut down. In the middle of an energy crisis, they've got a coal-burning power plant going offline because it cannot produce any energy. There's just one more reason not to invest in coal-burning power plants.
Well, yeah.
Should we move on?
Yeah, we'll move along. Come a little closer to home here.
We are up to Saturday, July 29th, and we've got a picture here of Wonder Woman, the real live Wonder. People thought they saw Wonder Woman in the movies. This is Wonder Woman.
This is an interesting article. It's local.
It's from the New York Times, though. It's an article about Green Mountain Power in Vermont, but it appeared in the New York Times.
Utility helps wean Vermonters from the electric grid.
I love this.
That's kind of an oxymoron or something like that.
It sounds completely counterintuitive. Throughout Vermont, customers are signing up for a program that will allow them to power their homes while disconnected from the grid. The projects are part of a bold experiment aimed at turning homes, neighborhoods, and towns into virtual power plants. Behind this movement is the local electric company, Green Mountain Power, which of course supplies power to Brattleboro. And there you see Mary Powell, aka Wonder Woman, who is the chairman of Green Mountain Power and who has been given awards all over the country because she is brilliant.
Well, she is.
She is. Well, absolutely brilliant.
I think the interesting thing about her is she's a CEO of a power company.
Yeah.
Usually CEOs of power companies are engineers.
Yes.
And they come up through the ranks, and
Yes.
all they want to do is the same thing the company's been doing for the last 100 years.
Yes.
Which made money.
Yes.
But it's a new market now.
Yes.
It's a new world.
Do you know what her background is?
Management.
She's for management. You know that I would
She's
I
not
would
an
just say
engineer at all.
forget it. Management people, they have no concept of what they're doing. Here is Mary Powell, who has looked at this, and she has described the infrastructure that we have in Vermont, in the United States, in the world, as sticks and strings.
Yes, yes. I was just going to say that. And she says her job is to manage the sticks and strings.
And her job is also to find a new business plan, which is why you need a management person who is brilliant instead of an engineer who's brilliant.
Well, she's done some very different things that seem to be working well.
She has indeed. A very impressive young lady. Okay.
There's a quick takeaway
Oh,
here.
I'm glad.
What's going on here is we've talked about this. Green Mountain Power is making batteries available to its customers
Yeah,
in attractive ways.
Yes.
So what it says is Green Mountain Power can draw on stored power from batteries installed in homes.
Yes.
That's part of the deal.
Yes. And this is
Reducing the electricity it must pull from the regional transmission system.
right. And that during peak demand periods,
That's heresy.
that electricity it's getting from the ISO New England can cost 60 cents per kilowatt
It can
hour.
cost a lot. Yeah.
So they're buying it for 60 cents and they're selling it for 50 or 18 cents or whatever it is.
Not a good business model.
Not a good business model. But what she's done here, and I actually, Tori Weekers, my landlady, has signed up for a consideration for one of these batteries. It's a Tesla Powerwall battery, which would go into the building that we live in some place, and Green Mountain Power would install it, and she would get, Green Mountain Power would lease the battery to us for $15 a month.
Okay.
This is not a lot of money.
No.
And what we get out of that is if the grid goes down, we've got
backup power.
Backup power, which at the rate that we use it in the household, in our households, plural, but this would probably be just hers, would probably keep her going for 2 days because she's very frugal and she's conscious of power consumption. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, if you have a situation where the grid is running, Green Mountain Power can put electricity into that battery, but they can always also take it out. So instead of paying 60 cents for high-priced power, they're providing a battery at a discount, and the lifetime cost of the battery is probably about a quarter to the customer. It's probably about a quarter of the cost of the battery.
Okay.
So
That's fair.
$15 a month, but it's a good deal on both sides.
Everybody walks away from the table smiling.
Everybody walks away from the table smiling. I mean, from Green Mountain Power's point of view, instead of investing in their own batteries and then trying to have to work that through the Public Utility Commission to figure out how that's going to adjust the price of their power, they're getting customers to say, yeah, we will host a battery for you and we'll give you $15 a month for the privilege.
Sounds like a good deal for me.
Yeah. Okay. Is that enough of that?
As we're talking about batteries, the next one says Gigafactory will produce more batteries than the rest of the world combined
This is
by a factor of 2.
This is amazing.
Isn't it?
When Tesla's Gigafactory was first announced, it was shared that it would be able to produce more batteries than the rest of the world could build, and at the time combined. Now, in an update, Tesla shared that when it was running at full capacity, the Gigafactory will produce more batteries than the rest of the world combined by a factor of 2. So 2/3 of the battery capacity that is produced in the world will come out of that one plant.
What happens if the power fails?
Well, you know, the plant is huge, and the
Yes.
roof is completely covered with solar panels.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how close they're going to be to net zero. I doubt that they're going to be very close because they're probably using a lot of
very,
energy.
very large factory.
But I have a
About half
feeling,
the size of Brattleboro.
yeah, I have a feeling that that's something they've actually considered.
Yeah, I bet.
You know,
Well, Musk is no fool.
not that I've
Pretty
noticed.
smart guy.
Every once in a while, I say, "Really? Is he going to be able to do that?" First
And he
time
goes
I
ahead
did
and does it.
the first time I did that, you know, my son came to me and he said, "Wow, this guy, he's got these cars he's going to build. They're going to be electric. They're going to be amazing." And I was saying, "Yeah, right." And what did I hear? You know, in the last year? Well, first thing you know, Tesla has a higher market value than Ford. Then it has a higher market value than GM.
You're talking about the shares.
The shares,
Yeah.
the value of the shares, and of course they're producing probably less than a tenth of the number of cars that GM is producing, and they're making a lot less money in terms of their revenues. But their stock is high, and what that tells you is that there are people out there who are expecting a lot more to come from Tesla.
We have another picture coming up
we
here.
haven't-
Oy.
The western U.S. is ablaze as the wildfire season has gotten off to an intense start. More than 37,000 fires have burned more than 5.2 million acres nationally since the beginning of the year, with 47 large fires burning across 9 states as of Friday. The fire season comes earlier and lasts longer than it used to, partly due to climate change.
A quick takeaway here. These fires have burned 2 million more acres than at this point in last year's wildfire season.
Yeah, so they've burned 5.2 million, and that's 2 million more. That's a 60% increase.
Wow.
That's
the
impressive.
annual number of large fires has tripled since the 70s, and the amount of land they burned is 6 times higher than it was 4 decades ago.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Well,
Climate
not.
change.
It's happening out west.
The President of the United States says that it's all a Chinese hoax.
Yeah, he did say that.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Take a closing glance at this picture there.
Yeah, this is
That's
from
kind of scary.
Climate Central. Yeah, and that's really not all that big a fire. When you compare that
Looks
with
big to me.
the one in Fort McHenry that happened last year.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
awful. Absolutely awful. And you know, it's hard. Every once in a while, I read a little bit about the Peshtigo fire, which happened the same day as the Chicago fire in the
I'm not familiar with
18. You know the Chicago fire.
Yeah,
right?
that one I know.
Well,
This
the
is Larry's cow.
Yeah, that's right. This cow happened. This fire happened the same day as the Chicago fire, but the Chicago fire cut the telegraph lines, so word of the Peshtigo fire didn't make it to the newspapers in the East and so forth. But the Peshtigo fire was in Wisconsin, and the area that it burned was about 2/3 the size of the state of Connecticut.
Wow.
There were villages.
Wow.
There were villages that were completely wiped out. Everybody killed, every house burned down, nothing left. But one of the things that happened in the Peshtigo fire was that it jumped Green Bay. Now, Green Bay is 10 to 20 miles across. This fire jumped a fire break that was 10 to 20 miles across, that was just solid water.
It jumped.
10 to 20 miles.
Wow.
And there are scientists who say, yeah, and there was another fire in Michigan. Maybe this thing jumped Lake Michigan. And the reason why they can say that is because among the other things they found in the fire was a sign which had been partly burned, that had got ripped from a hardware store by a fire tornado. And they figured the sign was carried very quickly up to an altitude of about 30,000 feet,
Yep.
where it didn't have enough oxygen and it was too cold to keep the thing going. And it was found miles away. It just floated through the air for miles. Well, of course, you've got embers and so forth at lower levels that are just carried all over the place.
They go pretty far.
They can go pretty far. And these big fires are scary. And a fire like this, could cause another fire that's quite a ways away, not 10 miles, but you know, a fire can jump a fire break. And you know, when I was a little kid living in Illinois, we learned about the fire breaks that the pioneers had around their houses because of the prairie fires. This is all part of reality. Anyway, I suppose we should go on.
I think we should.
Sunday, July 30th, and this is from Yahoo News UK, or maybe that's UK.
Extreme weather hits Europe. Scientists blame climate change.
Isn't that amazing? As Europe battles biblically extreme weather, experts say it's linked to climate change. From intense heat waves to severe flooding, Europe is a continent of extremes at the moment. Severe weather conditions have caused mayhem and destruction in many countries. Some parts of Italy have seen rainfall totals 80% below normal. That's a lot.
This is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Take away from the article is scientists believe these extreme weathers will become the norm in Western Europe unless we take immediate steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah.
Duh.
And yeah. And what was happening was Spain and Italy and
Portugal.
Well, Portugal, but I was going inland. Czechoslovakia. Well, it isn't Czechoslovakia anymore. I'm showing my age. But kind of southern and southern eastern Europe had very high temperatures in dry weather.
Yeah.
And in the north, the temperatures were below normal.
That's happening sort of in North America too.
Yeah.
They're below normal in the Northeast and
Yeah.
above normal in the Southwest.
Yeah, it's crazy. And in Alaska. And you know, like a couple of days ago, I got an email saying that in Seattle and Portland, Oregon, the temperature was 107.
Wow.
It should be like 72
Portland
degrees.
is kind of a temperate zone, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, these are, the wind in Seattle comes off Puget Sound and it keeps the place cool.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right.
Let's move along here.
Move along to the Houston
a little
Chronicle.
further north here. We got a picture of this one too.
This is from the Houston Chronicle.
Yeah, let's see if I can find
Again,
this
we're
one.
talking about climate change. Why in the world would we have a picture like that?
Well, that's because the Finnish icebreaker Nordica sets a new record in the Northwest Passage.
After 24 days at sea and a journey of over 10,000 kilometers, which is 6,214 miles, the icebreaker MSV Nordica set a new record for the earliest transit of the fabled Northwest Passage. The Arctic route linking the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans has been opening up sooner and for a longer period each summer due to climate change.
Well, the summary here is sea ice that foiled famous explorers and blocked the passage to all but the hardiest ships has been slowly melting away in one of the most visible effects of man-made global warming.
Yeah, and this means that ships can go through this Northwest Passage. Passenger ships have been doing it, and freighters could do it.
Well,
but
we've talked about this before.
Yeah, we have.
And there's now excursions up there.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I remember
you can pay good money to see a polar bear floating on the ice.
Yeah, I think it was when I was in high school. I might have been in college, but I think I was in high school. There was a company that turned an oil tanker into an icebreaker.
Okay.
So you had an oil tanker icebreaker.
Yeah.
And their idea was that this was before the pipeline in Alaska from the northern. What is it called? In the north.
North Barrel?
Yeah, down to the south.
Yeah.
The Alaskan long haul pipeline. Before that was put in, they had oil fields there.
They couldn't get the oil
They
out.
couldn't get the oil out. So these people decided that they were going to build an icebreaker that would go through there.
That was a tanker.
That was a tanker.
Yeah.
And they actually put the thing through. And for reasons that had to do with, I think, permits or something like that, they brought back a symbolic liter bottle of oil that they had got. And that's all they had.
Huh?
But yeah, they did not fill the ship because they couldn't get the permits to run the oil through the Northwest Passage.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I understand.
And, you know, I mean, if you think about it, ships that are in places like the Northwest Passage have occasionally just got stuck in the ice for periods
Well,
of
the
years.
famous one was the explorer got stuck for 2 years. Everybody died.
Yeah.
I don't remember the guy's name, but it was well known. I mean,
Yep. And when that happens, the ships are very often crushed, which means that they'd have, whatever it is, 1 million barrels of oil floating around this area where you've got local people dependent upon the sea for food. How are you going to deal with that? So, anyway, they brought back 1 liter of oil, and then they turned the ship into something else because it had become clear that it was not going to be a safe thing
well,
to do.
what this is all about is it's a much shorter route from west to east if you go over the pole.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to go from northern Europe to China, that's the shortest route. If you're going by
around the
ship.
Horn of Africa, or you got to go through the Panama Canal.
Yeah. And the Panama Canal would add thousands of miles. Although, honestly, yeah, I think I'd rather go through the Northwest Passage. I think that'd be fun.
And see some polar bears.
Yeah, and this article, by the way, on the 30th of July, has a lot of photographs in it. Some of which are not very interesting.
The one about the icebreaker?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of pictures in that one. That's a good one to look at.
It's a good one to look at, but don't expect all the photographs to be good. Okay, our next item is from the Duluth News Tribune.
The social cost of carbon dioxide emissions from Minnesota power plants increased. You have to explain what the social cost
Well,
is.
you have gasoline in your cars. You've got oil in your diesel engines for trucks. You've got coal being burned in power plants, natural gas being burned in power plants, and this pollutes the countryside. We've got mercury in Lake Champlain, so don't eat a large trout from there because it's going to be full of mercury. We've got people with emphysema, lung cancer, all kinds of pulmonary problems, chronic bronchitis, circulatory problems, and so forth that result from the pollution. And we've also got climate change has raised the minimum temperatures in Vermont by about 10 degrees in the last 30 years. This has brought into the state Lyme disease. It's brought in Eastern equine encephalitis. It's brought in West Nile virus. These are diseases that none of them was present in 1995. They've all been increasing more or less constantly.
Social cost is a cost that's not paid for by a producer.
Right.
But is instead borne by a non-related third party, usually the public.
Wow. He was asking me to say that, and he said it himself, and I did much better job than I could have. Anyway, medical stuff is just one of the problems. I should read the blurb here. Minnesota utility regulators greatly increased the social cost of carbon dioxide emissions from power plants, but not as much as requested by 2 state agencies and a number of environmental groups. It voted 3-2 to raise the cost from the current range of 44 cents to $4.53 per short ton to a range of $9.05 to $43.06 per short ton. In other words, the minimum was raised by a factor of approximately 20, and the maximum was raised by a factor of approximately 9.
So this is basically a carbon tax.
Big increase. Yes, it's a carbon tax. And by the way, for anybody who doesn't want a carbon tax, I will point out Rex Tillerson, Rex Tillerson, who is now the Secretary of State of the United States and had been CEO of ExxonMobil, when he was CEO of ExxonMobil, said we should have a carbon tax. That's what he said. Now, Donald Trump won't support it, but that's what Rex Tillerson said.
Interesting.
So we're up to Monday, July 21st.
Yeah, we got a very interesting picture here.
We have a really dull picture here. This is
well, it looks like solar panels, and it sort of is, but it's not what we usually think of.
No, it also looks a little like golf greens tipped on their sides.
Well, what it is, it's arrays of bacteria gathering sunlight and carbon dioxide and converting them to fuel.
There you go.
It's a new kind of solar panel.
Yeah, that's what it is. A new
A
kind
bio-solar
of
panel.
bio-solar panel. You have a
Very
title on this?
interesting. I'll leave it up there for a little while.
Do it. You
Yeah,
have
let me talk about the
yeah, do that.
senators push back against Trump energy research cuts.
Now, this is interesting. The Senators Appropriations Committee wants to save ARPA-E, the Advanced Energy Research Division President Donald Trump proposed eliminating. The House budget plan would eliminate ARPA-E, but the Senate committee's report recommended not only maintaining the division, but actually increasing its budget 8% to $330 million. Now, that's interesting to me because we've got Republicans who are heavily involved in this, and they're recommending increasing the
Well, this
expenditures.
ARPA-E is a little known, but it's a pretty cool outfit.
Yeah.
They're research development people.
Yeah,
They don't utilize what they develop themselves, but they farm it out.
yeah,
Here's what they're saying. They funds research at institutions around the country on a wide variety of technologies,
yeah.
from carbon capture to advanced batteries with alternative fuels, including research into improving solar panel efficiency and using microorganisms to produce ammonia.
Which
we
is
talked
what,
about that on the
which
show
is
too.
what we had in that picture.
Exactly,
Microorganisms working, actually taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and turning it into other things.
And ammonia can be turned into fuel or it can be turned into agricultural fertilizer.
Yeah. So,
The times they are changing.
should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Our next item-
Let's take a quick last look at this thing.
Yeah.
I like that thing. I
Those
think
are
that's awful neat.
biological solar panels.
Yeah. Alrighty.
It says they're full of bacteria, but I think they're full of moss. The green isn't right.
Well,
for
bacteria aren't colored.
They've changed the nomenclature scheme since we were in high school. I was taught that there was a thing called blue-green algae.
Yeah, algae are colored.
And
yeah.
they were not bacteria. But now they're
Right.
saying not blue-green algae, but cyanobacteria, because they're,
Oh, they changed it. Okay, so now they are bacteria.
yeah, now they're called cyanobacteria, or
Same circus, different clowns.
yeah. Okay, so now we're up to an item from the South China Morning Post, and this is kind of scary.
So I think we're skipping one.
We're skipping one.
Yeah,
A
we're
study
skipping
from Alto University. Okay, go ahead.
This is from Clean Technica.
Clean Technica. That's right.
Solar heating could provide more than 80% of heating energy for the households in Finland. And for those who aren't aware, Finland is not on the equator.
Not exactly. A study from Alto University found that solar energy could be used to convert between 53% and 81% of the annual domestic heating energy consumption in Finland. Finland is kind of stuck between Sweden and northern Russia.
Yes.
The study considered heat that could be stored seasonally. The findings relate in approximation.
That's for a long time, isn't it?
Yeah. The studies relate in approximation to the potentials in neighboring countries at the same latitudes as well. In other words, if you can do this in Finland, you could probably do it in Alaska.
Yeah. There you go.
But 53 to 81% of annual domestic heating is a lot.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
It certainly is. It's interesting what they're doing. What they're doing here, they're accumulating heat from the solar panels. So these are thermal solar panels that they're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, and they're conducted to above-ground water storage tanks for short-term heat storage and borehole storage underground for seasonal storage.
Yeah.
So they can store the summer's heat.
And of
For the
course,
winter.
they've got a lot of sunshine in Finland during the summer.
They do that. Yeah, it's almost 24 hours, isn't it?
Yeah, in some places it could be. Which of course would mean that you'd have to have thermal solar panels on trackers, and I've never heard of that happening, but why not? But what they're doing is they're gathering heat during the summer and storing it underground, and then during the winter getting the heat from underground and using it in the houses, which is
Sounds like a good idea to me.
It's actually been tried in Brattleboro.
Has it really?
Yeah. Habitat for Humanity built a house a couple of years ago. I don't know how well it worked. It might not have worked well.
Huh.
But, you know, they did it. Okay. Now we're up to an item from the South China Morning Post.
And we got a
We have
scary
a
picture.
Scary picture.
Scary picture. It looks like a volcano, but it's not.
Yeah, and you know, Tom, looking at that picture, I wonder how big that is.
Bigger than a bread box.
Yeah, bigger than a bread box.
We're looking at something rather large.
Rather large. I'm going to guess that that thing would have to be at least 50 or 60 feet across.
I wouldn't bet against it. I'd even go for bigger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those little creases that you see near the top of the crater are little rivulets
Yep,
where
from
water
that
has.
rain.
Yeah, and I don't think they'd be spaced like that if this was 3 feet across.
I
But
don't
anyway,
think so either.
what have you got for a title?
Mysterious craters blowing out of Russia could mean trouble for the whole planet.
In
They're
Siberia.
not just happening in Russia, by the way.
Yeah. In Siberia, temperature rises are causing mysterious giant craters, but more dire consequences could be in store. Permafrost melting is causing the collapses of railways and roads and sinking building foundations as powerful greenhouse gases are released.
Well, we talked about that. Northern Canada,
Yeah,
big time
yeah.
problem.
We had a horrible looking picture of a house that was tilted.
Yeah,
you know,
bingo.
because its foundation was on permafrost and the permafrost had melted.
Well, according to the article, they don't really know what's causing this.
Yeah.
But the leading theory suggests that the holes are created when trapped gases explode.
Somehow.
Somehow.
Yeah,
Yep.
it could be not a chemical explosion, but a release because they're under pressure. And
I'm thinking it's some sort of a chemical explosion. But
you think so? It might be.
How they're getting ignited, I haven't a clue. But
Yep. Okay, we are up to Tuesday, August 1st, and we have an item here from the Financial Times.
construction work halted at South Carolina nuclear power plant.
Wow.
We've talked about it happening. Well, guys, it has happened.
Yeah. Work has suspended at 2 nuclear power plants built by Westinghouse in South Carolina. Santee Cooper and South Carolina Electric and Gas Company said that they had ordered a halt to construction of their jointly owned project, the VC Summer plant, due to spiraling costs. The decision casts doubt on other nuclear projects, and 3 other nuclear projects are really expected
They're
to fail.
dangling. They're
One of them is
dangling,
in North Anna. The other one is the other 2 are Vogtle in
We talked about
Georgia.
Vogtle, yep.
The North Anna plant, they're
Vogtle.
Vogtle. the North Anna plant, they're talking about a single reactor costing $25 billion. Now, what could you do with $25 billion?
I could go on quite a spree.
Wow. I've said I could spend $1 million in a morning, but it would take me
Take you more than 10 minutes.
longer than a morning to spend $25 billion.
These reactors were among the first American nuclear power plants to be built in decades.
Yep.
And they're going to be among the last, that's for sure.
Yeah, unless something happens to revive the condition of
The best
nuclear
case
industry.
scenario shows this project would be several years late and 75% more than originally planned.
Yep. Okay, we have to go on because we don't have much time left.
We got
We have
11
an
minutes.
item from the Charleston Post
Got a
Courier.
picture here.
We do. And this is not the worst picture that you can get of this
A
particular
lot of pictures
problem.
in this article. This is, if you like
Yeah.
pictures, this is nice.
This
Let
is
me get it
the
up
one
here.
I thought was the best looking, but there's some of them they're not nice.
Well, they're not intended to be nice. That's the point.
Yeah. So did you read the title or should you?
Sea rise and dead trees. Climate change before your eyes in ghost forests.
Right. Ghost forests or stands of dead trees along coastlines of invaded by rising seas are something scientists call one of the most visible markers of climate change. The process has occurred naturally for thousands of years, but it has accelerated in recent decades as polar ice melts, sea levels rise, and the salt water pushes farther inland. And this thing, those trees were all green at one time in the not very distant past, and the salt water is poisoning them. And what's happening is the sea levels are rising, so the salt moves farther inland. And
The article says it was dry, usable land 50 years ago.
Yeah, And
now it's marshes with dead stumps and dead trees, and it's happening around the world.
it's happening all over the place. And in some cases, it's happening faster because of land subsidence. So the land is actually going down as the sea level is rising. But in other places, you know, it's happening very slowly or not at all because the sea level is rising, but so is the level of the land itself because of tectonic things that are going on. But in general, this is happening all over the world. And if the land is not doing anything rising or falling, the sea level is rising over it. Okay, move on.
Move on.
CNN.
EPA ordered to enforce Obama-era methane pollution rule.
The EPA must enforce Obama-era pollution limits for oil and gas industry. 9 of the 11 judges in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia issued this latest ruling after another ruling by a court in July that the EPA unlawfully tried to delay implementing the Obama-era methane pollution rule. So the Trump administration is trying to prevent this rule from being
That's exactly
followed,
what's going
and
on.
the courts are saying, no, you've got to do it.
Well,
So
we'll have to see what happens on this thing because
we
it's
will.
probably going to go to the Supreme Court.
it very well could. We are up to Wednesday, August 2nd, with UREC alert.
UREC alert. But of
UREC
course,
alert.
risk to Europe's most dangerous pathogens revealed.
The impact of climate change on the emergence and spread of infectious diseases could be greater than previously thought, according to research by the University of Liverpool. The study, published in Scientific Reports, is the first large-scale assessment of how climate affects bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens in Europe. And I should say, this is not just pathogens for people, it's pathogens for animals and plants as well.
Absolutely.
Yep. So,
I gotta get you up there instead of that picture. We've been
well,
looking at it too long.
you know, we do have a picture coming up.
Coming up. Well, let's
should
see.
we
Is there
move on?
anything about here? Yeah, they do say there's zoonotic. I didn't even know that word. Zoonotic pathogens, those that spread from animals to humans, are also found to be more climate sensitive than those that affect only humans or only animals.
Really?
So if your dog gets sick, you can get sick.
Oh, yes. Well,
As
yeah.
75% of emerging diseases are zoonotic.
Wow.
Emerging diseases may be particularly likely to be impacted.
There you go.
Didn't have anything to worry about this morning, did I?
No. Well, you don't have to worry about it now because the president will tell you it's all
It's all a
Chinese hoax.
It's all a
Okay,
hoax.
our next item is
Got a
from
nice
Renew
picture
Economy, which is an Australian. Yeah, I like this picture.
Yeah,
this
well,
is
it's
an
a nice picture, yeah.
Australian publication talking about a wind farm off the coast of Massachusetts.
Tesla joins effort to pair batteries with offshore wind. There's Tesla again.
Tesla again.
Yeah.
Tesla and wind farm developer Deepwater Wind plan to team up to create the largest project in the world that combines offshore wind farm with large-scale electricity storage. The company's announced the Revolution Wind Farm, about 12 miles off the shore of Martha's Vineyard, would be able to store power in Tesla batteries.
This is a great combination.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, it
here.
is.
The project's going to have the capacity to generate 144 megawatts of wind power.
Yeah.
That's about a quarter of what Yankee was putting out when it
Right.
was shut down.
Yeah.
The farm expects to begin operating in 2023, and it's going to be built next to another wind farm proposed by Deepwater Wind, which will serve Long Island and New York,
There you go.
right next to each other.
Yeah, except they may both be batteries backed at some point. I don't know that the other one.
Ultimately, I think
They probably will
it's
be.
the future.
It's the
You know,
future.
and the future is now.
Yeah, but the batteries would probably be one of them on Martha's Vineyard and the other on Long Island.
Say again?
One set of batteries supporting the one wind farm would be on Martha's Vineyard,
Yeah,
and
the
the other
other-
set
yeah, right.
on Long Island. There are organizations that are putting batteries in the wind turbine masts.
Wow, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, but that's for very short term
Why didn't I think of that
storage.
one?
Yeah, that is primarily just to maintain a constant voltage. so that the wind turbine, if the wind is increasing and decreasing, will just maintain
It kind of evens everything out.
evens everything out. Yeah. Okay. And our last item is from Clean Technica.
Keystone XL pipeline may never be completed due to a lack of customers. Who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought that?
Well, you know, there's a lot of things that are working against the Keystone XL pipeline. The environmental impact study of the Keystone XL pipeline assumes that the price of oil would never fall below $100 a barrel during its useful life.
Wonder what whoever thought that one is doing for a living these days.
I don't know. Today, oil is selling for about half that amount. Finding customers willing to sign up for oil shipments in 2020 may be harder than expected. And without customers, the pipeline will languish. Why would you build a pipeline that requires that you have prices twice as high as they are?
I don't think they anticipated the price of oil dropping so far so quickly.
I don't think they did. And, you know, I remember that when the Saudis started pumping huge amounts of oil a couple of years ago, there was one question that was, are they trying to punish Russia? But one question was, are they trying to prevent Americans from developing the tar sands oils in Canada and other hard oils in the United States? And I don't know that we had that one guy who was a Saudi oil minister who said that the reason they were pumping so much oil was because they figured in 15 years nobody would want it anymore, and they wanted to sell as much of it as they could.
I've heard that one before. They want to get rid of that oil while they still can.
Yeah, but the Keystone XL pipeline, and the same thing is true of all of these pipelines. If the product isn't moving through the pipelines, the owner of the pipeline is going to go broke.
For sure.
You know,
pipelines aren't cheap. You know.
No, they're not.
You've got to have those running all the time.
Mm-hmm. And Keystone XL is still not finished. And what are they doing now? They're building. The people who own farms they're fighting having the Keystone XL go through. They're putting up solar panels. So the Keystone XL pipeline would have to pay for the solar panels to get through their farm.
Yeah. That's more than just symbolic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
There's a little irony here coming through it. How ironic would it be if the thing that finally drives a stake through the heart of this abomination, they're talking about the pipeline, of course, is simply that there are not enough customers to make it commercially viable.
Well, that can happen.
That seems to be what's happening.
Yep. We are up to the end of our news.
We have 2 more minutes to talk.
We do, and we have an item to talk about, which is the thing that Tad Montgomery asked us to talk about.
Okay.
Lead
the way.
Yeah. When Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement, there was an immediate response. It's the same day there had been 10 states that had sent him a letter saying, please don't withdraw. And so when he did, 3 of them, which were California, Washington, and New York, had their governors jointly announced that they were starting an organization of states.
We've talked about this one, haven't
yes.
we? Yeah.
Well,
there's about 5 of these different things happening at once.
That's the problem. There's about 5 of them happening at once. And that original organization, which was the U.S. State Climate Alliance, I think.
I can't keep
them straight. I've got to do research into this. They have now 14 states. There's about 10 other states that said they're planning on doing the same thing, but they're not formally joining the alliance. Between those that are in and those that are not in, we have nearly half the states in the United States, and of those, I think 6 have Republican governors who have gone for this. Well, it's not just states. You've got the cities the Sierra Club Alliance of cities that are going to be 100% carbon free. And you've got the cities that we are still in. You've got the Mayor's Climate Alliance. You've got all these organizations. And then what happened was Jerry Brown, the governor of California, and Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, announced that they're forming
They
an
got one
umbrella
going.
group
Yep.
that will invite all of them in, and also will invite in universities and businesses and whatever. And
New members.
Phil Scott, the governor of Vermont, put Vermont into that first organization that we talked about. So the question is, how are we going to sort out what we should do? And it's time to go.
I think it is. Well,
Have a nice day. Have a nice week.
Still